This community of care is created through our work and time together, our commitment to one another. This is our covenant, to walk together in loving fellowship, to share our hopes and values. As we pass these baskets, we thank you for your generous gifts, which support the work of this religious community and Unitarian Universalism in the world at large. As a reflection of our values, we are pleased to participate in the Change for Change program. The coins you place in the basket today will support the work of nonprofits in and around the Grand Valley. With gratitude, we will now receive today's offering. This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to its life, we affirm our lives within it.
Let us sing now together. Number 67, we sing now together.
We sing now together. would like you to share.
So, we live in a world of propaganda. And I was going to say, in America, the Western world is propaganda, but now with the internet and social media and all of this stuff, I think kind of throughout the world, there's propaganda. And for the most part, at least here in America, because I can still remember commercial jingles from when I was 5, like, Oscar Mayer and My Baloney has the first name. Anyways, the point is we learn how to turn it out, and sometimes some of the jingles or the commercials go into us. And I remember a radio ad from, it's probably been at least 10 years ago, that actually was very effective. I can't today tell you who they were advertising, like I can't tell you the name of the company, but it was this ad that basically said, "I almost gave." And it talked about how somebody was driving and they saw somebody in need and they thought to themselves, "Well, I almost gave. My first intention was, I have a $50 bill here. Maybe I'll just give this person this $50 bill." And then they started thinking, well, but I need that $50, so maybe I should just give them a 20. I think I have a $20 bill. And then they thought, but it doesn't look like I don't have a 20, I have a 10. But I kind of needed that 10. And, but maybe I could just give them a dollar, but I don't have any dollar bills. And before they knew it, they had passed the person, and instead of having blessed this person with the initial instinct of, I have something to give, I'm going to be generous, in the course of just a few seconds, they talked themselves out of that generosity. And I'm sure that ad campaign was probably about Thanksgiving time, and it was probably for one of the charities that is helping people. But I never forgot. It was very effective, at least for my internal psyche, because how many times have I done that? And I guess I'll invite all of us to think, how many times have you done that? That thought, that initial instinct, that impulse to be generous, and then we get into our head or our mind and we give ourselves all types of reasons why we just can't do that, or why it's not a good idea, or whatever. And we just end up going on with our day and not being generous. And when I was thinking about generosity this morning, I was thinking about that question of why. Why do we as human beings talk ourselves out of giving? And that's a little bit of a different question than why do we at times choose not to give? Because there may be times that we just choose not to give. It's just not the right time or something. But it's a little bit different. What is that psychology going on when we talk ourselves out of it? What is going on in us that we end up closing down and choosing not to be generous. And my question for myself was this morning was, where does that contraction come from? But then I thought, well, before we can answer the question of why we talk ourselves out of being generous, maybe we need to ask ourselves, what is generosity? And what does it mean to be generous? And as I reflected on that question this morning, I'm a person who feels, and so I get kind of in touch with myself based on feeling. And so I asked myself, what does it feel like to be generous? And I came back with, when I'm feeling generous, it's an openness, it's an expansion, it's a sense of abundance, and it's the sense that I have something to give and it can go out, and instead of being depleted, I end up feeling more open and expanded. That, I think, for me is how I know within my body if I'm being generous or not. Because we can give something without necessarily being generous. You know, I'm sure, at least I only talk for myself, but I know there have been times in my life when somebody asks for something and I give it to them, but I'm just a little bit grumpy about it. And so they have received what they asked for, but it wasn't with that expanded openness of generosity. It was that closed contracted sense of victimhood or anger or lack of compassion. So just because we give something doesn't mean we're necessarily being generous. So for me, that's when I think about generosity, it starts with what it feels like. And for me, it feels like an openness, an expansion. My heart chakra is open, my emotional center is open, it feels expansive. And I was talking with my husband Cameron about this morning, and I was trying to come up with a definition of generous, and what he said, his understanding of being generous is a general awareness and openness to the needs of others. And I really like that definition. A general awareness and openness to the needs of others. And so, given that definition for us today, what might generosity look like? What are some examples that you can think of in your own life or even within your own self where you have either experienced that generosity of others or you have shared your own generosity in that capacity? And I think in general, because we live in kind of a capitalistic society, when we think of generosity, I think, at least for me, the first thing I think about is money. And yes, we can be generous with our money. We talk about every Sunday, we talk about our time, talent, and treasure. And so the gift of money or financial exchange is one way to be generous, but I think that we limit ourselves if we limit the definition to just that. And so I spent this morning thinking about the different ways that we can be generous given that definition of awareness and openness to the needs of others. So we can be generous with our time. regardless of how much money we have, sometimes all that's needed is all that somebody needs from us is just a little bit of our time. And we know that as parents a lot, that sometimes the kids just, especially if we as parents get really busy or the week is hectic, sometimes what our kiddos just want from us, they don't need the biggest gift, they don't need the newest clothes, they don't need the Nike Air shoes. Sometimes they just want to go for a drive and talk, or not talk and listen to music. And then maybe talk about what that music means to them. Sometimes they just need a parent or a grandparent or an aunt and uncle to sit down with them before bedtime and read a story. That's generosity. That's acknowledging the need of somebody else. And even if it's been a busy day, to just say, I'm feeling contracted, I'm intentionally going to open up, I'm going to expand a little bit, I'm gonna be generous with my time. And what you sometimes find is that when you come from that state of openness and expansion, they don't need that much time. They just need that space that creates the connection that helps them feel seen and valued and needed. And that is actually timeless. And so getting ourselves into that place of openness and expansion for our children might only be a 5 or 10 minute story. It might only be a 10-second hug. But have you ever really hugged somebody for 10 seconds? That is a really long time. And it's not. But that is generosity. So we have generosity of time. We can be generous with compassionate understanding. When we take the time, instead of if somebody is grumpy with us, maybe even at a grocery store with a stranger, we see somebody that's just in a bad mood, and we can easily contract and react and respond and be grumpy back and become stingy. Or we can open up, we can expand, we can see this person, this stranger, in a way that perhaps they're not seeing themselves, in a way that perhaps they're not even seeing us, and we can be generous with compassionate understanding. And something as simple as a smile can sometimes make a difference in somebody's life. And especially I think, in this world that is feeling so contracted, it makes a difference to smile at people you care about. It makes a difference to smile at your family and your friends, and I'm smiling at all of you. But how often do we take the time to just genuinely see somebody else and give somebody that owes us nothing, that we owe nothing to, a genuine smile? And we can give that smile and we go on with our day and they go on with their day, but we don't know what that meant for them. And you always hear the stories about, somebody talking about how they were maybe at the lowest point in their life and they were about ready to give up, and some random stranger looked down at them and helped them stand up, or gave a smile, or saw them in a way, in a capacity that they had felt like they were invisible. and it changed their life. And those aren't just feel-good stories. That's real. Those are real, and those moments are powerful. And so we can be generous with our compassion. I was thinking about this morning, and I realize I think that we can be generous with our vulnerabilities. Sometimes if there's something going on and everybody is feeling just a little bit scared or a little bit insecure, but we're all putting on a facade and we're trying to feel strong and safe. And if somebody just says, you know what, I'm actually really scared right now. You can actually feel the relief in the rest of the room with people saying, oh, yeah, me too. I thought it was just me. I'm feeling this way too. But sometimes it takes that first person to be vulnerable to create a safe enough space for other people to be vulnerable. And so be careful if you are one of those people who occasionally is vulnerable and then you go home and you beat yourself up about it or say, oh, I wish I hadn't revealed that, or I wish I hadn't said that. No, maybe it was your vulnerability that opened up something in somebody else where they felt safe for the first time to also express and be vulnerable right back. That's generosity. I think about Liz, and Liz goes with her guitar, and she shares her beautiful music downtown or wherever you are. And sometimes at St. Mary's. That's generosity. That's compassion. That is an open-hearted expansion of saying, this is who I am, this is what I have to share, and I'm going to be here with you in your beauty and in your pain, or in your just busyness of the day, and I'm going to share some music. And Liz, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. That's generosity. And so my invitation for us today is to take this week as we enter into Thanksgiving, and we can look at your own life a little bit. Where would you say that you are generous, where you are expanded, you're open, and you can be who you are and give who you are because there's a safety in that, right? Like with generosity, you can't be generous if you don't feel safe. And so sometimes we don't give because perhaps we feel maybe not safe. But where in your life do you know that you have the ability and the comfort and the knowledge that whatever you give will not deplete you but will energize you? Where do you do that? Do you do that with your music? Do you do that with your words? Do you do that with your smiles? A smile to somebody does not deplete. It doesn't take anything to offer a smile. Do you do that with your money? Some people have an abundance of financial resources, and they can be extremely generous with their resources. But it's not only that. And there are places in all of our lives also where we feel a little bit contracted. And we can say, I know that I'm really open and I'm expanded and I'm generous in this area, and yet I will admit in this other area over here, there's some fear there, or there's some contraction, and I'm not as generous. Because we're not all perfect. And so we're not all going to be completely open-hearted in all areas of our life. But what I want us to think about today is that every one of us does have an area in your life where you can be open and expanded and completely loving and generous. And think about that and honor that within yourself and within your life. And then the invitation is also to say, okay, and where am I a little bit contracted, and how might I expand just a little bit? But the key to that is you don't compare yourself with somebody else, right? I stand up here every Sunday and I speak and I cry and I do what I do. But that's who I am in my generosity. But it wouldn't be fair for some of you to say, well, I can't stand up and give a sermon like Wendy. Well, of course you can't, because you're not me, right? I mean, some people give amazing sermons, I'm not saying that. But then that wouldn't be fair to me to say I can give a good sermon, but I certainly can't sing like Joanna. That doesn't deplete me to know that I really kind of can't carry a tune. And I love when I try to like sing a little bit and Joanna looks at me with that beautiful smile, because I'm thinking I'm pretty off tune, right? But it doesn't deplete me. It doesn't, for me to acknowledge her beauty and her to acknowledge my words and us to acknowledge this choir and Liz and all of the beauty that is in this room. We all, every one of us, have it. And the invitation then is for us to share it. And so this week, as we go into this Thanksgiving weekend, where is your generosity? What do you have that is unique to you that you can share that will absolutely bless the world? And where are you just a little bit contracted and can do a little bit of work to just not really open up just a little bit of more expansion? And that's ongoing work, and so I think I'll leave it there. But let's move into this week with a little bit of open-hearted, expanded generosity. What are the needs of the people around you, and how are you able and willing to possibly meet some of those needs? And with that, let us sing number 60, nope, not that one. Number 32, Now Thank We All Our God. I think this is a new one, and we choose these because the choir's here. Let's stand and sing. we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace. Amen.